For everyone who has a part in running a successful business, time is usually the biggest limiting factor when it comes to prioritizing their health. So through this presentation, I'm essentially going to talk you through how to overcome the obstacle of time limitation to get your health to where you know it needs to be and maintain it there. The main problem you'll have is that you don't have enough hours in the day to focus on your health. Now, realistically, everybody does have the same hours in the day to do something about their health. And the reason that they don't get to where they want to be isn't usually because of a lack of time. Because if we were to bring it back to who you would sit here and admire and the business owners that you hold in high regard, or whoever your role model might be, they will have a very similar lifestyle to you, but they get more out of what they do, which is exactly why you admire them. Now, if time was genuinely the limiting factor, people in your situation would not be able to look after their health, but you know that they already do, so you know that that's not true. And you're in a position where you need to make a significant change to your health and start doing things differently. And realistically, it always boils down to you just need to think differently. And to think differently, you need to be exposed to new information so you can make far more intelligent decisions to get to where you want to be with limited time. Now, this presentation is focused on the tactics. However, before we go into the tactics, I always have to bring you back to the foundations. And the foundations are, if you don't see health as a priority that you need to have, you're never going to make a change. So let's talk about health and time first off, and let's define it. So health can be seen as your resource of time. It is your quality of time that you have in life, and it's also the quantity of time, so how long you live. If you are trading and prioritizing other things at the expense of your health, and your health is going down, you are literally trading time for quality and quantity of time, which really does make absolutely no sense at all, because in theory, it is the only time that you have. So it should always be a priority no matter what's going on, so everything else downstream becomes easier from there. And to make it a priority, you have to get clear on the pain that you want to move away from. So how is your health negatively impacting your life, or how will it continue to negatively impact things and make things worse if you don't make a change? And what is the desired state? What is the happiness? What is the pleasure that you will derive from actually building your health to a better place? And what is it you want to move to? Without getting these two things right, you're not going to make a change. Now, this session isn't about those two things. You can dive into the sessions in the lab, so don't tell me you can't achieve your goals, to see real life stories, and also initiating long-term change. There's some sessions in there that dives deep into understanding the pain that you're in and understanding the happiness you actually want to move to, and getting really clear on that and reinforcing that over time so you consistently make better choices in the short term that fuel your long-term vision. But as I said, today's all about the tactics. And even though we're going into tactics, it still comes down to who do you want to be, because we're going to go into how to build your calendar out and how to really focus on using time to the best of your ability. But again, to get there, we need to think about what your values are, because I was sat before in a lecture hall. I was going to a talk. It was specific for businesses for health and wellness coaches. And I remember being sat there and the person asking this question, they said, if an alien flew down and they had a look at your calendar and they observed your day-to-day actions and they observed your week-to-week actions, what would that alien, without speaking to you, think you value most? And I'll be honest, at the time, my attention was split between a couple of different businesses. It was split between coaching, boxing. It was split between so many different things. And I kind of sat there and wrote all these really fancy things of, oh, well, my values are connecting with people, family time, really helping make a difference in people's lives through health and wellness, spending quality time with people that I really respect and want to be around. And then I actually thought about what the alien would think, and genuinely at the time I was travelling up and down the country that particular week after to take gypsies to box for about, I think it was like 6 minutes in total for the schoolboy national finals. And I literally sat there thinking, like, my alien this week would definitely think that I just value driving gypsies up and down the country to box for 6 minutes. and it kind of like hit me quite hard to think that actually, is my calendar really reflecting what I want out of life and who I want to be? Or is it reflecting me getting pushed and pulled into a life that I don't even really want? Now, once you've got clear with that, you'll start to understand how my evidence-based health process is going to help you get to where you want to be. These are the 3 core things that will formulate your health plan that I'll put together for you, and over time you'll understand so you can do it yourself, in order to actually get you to a place where your calendar reflects your values. So everything you do for your health, it's all going to be science driven, it's my expert knowledge, and then we're also using your data to reflect, which I'm going to go into more detail with. And once we use that all effectively, it means that we can get to this place where everything you do for your health is the absolute minimum you need for the optimal result. We're not wasting time, we're not wasting energy, we're not wasting focus doing things that just give you diminishing returns and causes you just to fall off the bandwagon and resent health and fitness. But let's start first about your data. You need to measure your health like you measure business. Now, there's so many different metrics you can measure, and I'll allude to those as I go through the presentation, but one of the most important ones that I've come across is heart rate variability, which if you've been working with me for long enough and I think you're at risk of burnout or your goals specifically show a need for this, I'd have recommended something like Whoop to you to measure this variable. And the reason it's so good is because it measures your body's ability to deal with stress. You have your fight or flight system, which is essentially active when you're very stressed, and you have your rest and recovery system, all regulated by your nervous system. Now, if you're in chronic stress, you're going to be in fight or flight. Heart rate variability is a metric that shows this, because if we don't get this right, everything else I tell you to do and advise for you with your health becomes arbitrary, because your body isn't in a place to take it on. You don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to take it on. So it's pointless. We need to get this right first, and we need to get this balanced. Now, moving on from the heart rate variability, we then want to look at specific things we want to measure depending on what phase of training you're in. Now, this becomes so important when we're looking at managing your time, because what most people do wrong is that they focus on too many things. Periodization is essentially a systematic plan for a desired outcome. It's something that I had to go in depth through in my master's degree training elite athletes, and it's something that everybody should be using when it comes to their health and wellness. And as you'll know, in this program you've got 3 phases. You've got the accelerated weight loss phase, we've got the healthy lifestyle phase, and then you've got the performance phase. Depending on where you're in, it will depend on what we're measuring. Now, if we're in the weight loss phase, it's calories, it's step count, it's gym sessions. If you are in the healthy lifestyle phase, we'll probably move you completely away from calorie counting. We'll just be looking at gym sessions and different health metrics and making sure, depending on what that is, depending on your starting point, will depend on what we measure during that point phase. And in the 3rd phase, the performance phase, it's specific performance targets like marathon PBs, if you really want to go there. It's weightlifting PBs, it's performance metrics in terms of health as well. It can be basic things like blood pressure. And then also we might be calorie counting at that point if you're looking to increase muscle and we need to get a bit more specific. Throughout those 3 phases though, the foundation to it all will be your body's ability to manage stress. Once we've got clear on the data we need to measure, we can then start to look at putting your plan together using the relevant science and my expert knowledge and experience. And this doesn't have to just be me, by the way. This can be anybody who you're looking to work with. If you finish working with me, or at the time if you've got some friends who can advise you who are actual experts in what they do. This is really the tactical part. the reason I mention the evidence-based process before this is because if we don't get that right, what we give for you to focus on will be wishy-washy. It won't really get the outcomes that you want, and it'll be falling into those diminishing returns. Once we've got that all right, so we're measuring the right data, we know the outcomes, we're focused on the right things, we've got the science backing it, expert knowledge backing it as well, then it's just about time blocking. And you can break this down how you need to. Now, but before I go into time blocking, I want to talk about space. So I don't want this to be a session where you look at it and think, I'm just adding more stuff for you to do. Sometimes the best thing that you can do when you've got so much going on is to plan to just have space. If you've watched Mickey Flanagan's stand-up, he talks about doing proper fuck all, and I think that's really important for people to focus on if they're getting to that point where, do you know what, we might be burnt out. If your recovery to stress balance is completely out of whack, if you're working non-stop, if health is deteriorating, we actually just might need space to rethink, space to take some time away before we actually go into this specific plan and the real big tactics around things. But once you've got that space and you are ready to take action, then we'll break it down. So it all starts with you. What most people do is that they'll plan their calendar and they'll just plan for work. And remember the alien coming down to look at your calendar. They'll just think that you value work. You don't value anything else. You don't value your health, your family's health and everything else. They just think you value work. So what you should actually do is start with you. And if we're looking at that stress to recovery balance, sleep is the thing that will impact that the most. So we should start with sleep. Prioritize things like no food before bed for 4 hours. So you actually plan that into your calendar of when you're going to eat 4 hours before bed. It's the same bedtime, same wake time that you're planning it into your calendar, so it's very clear. Setting up the environment, that includes getting other people on board with your calendar so that they're really clear what time you're going to bed, what time you're waking up, so there's no conflicts. It's setting up the environment in your bedroom so there's no screens. You're clear in your day, in your schedule, when screen time's going to finish and everything else. It's just getting really granular with how you're planning things around sleep so you can actually reap the benefits to your stress to recovery levels. Then we want to look at recovery increasing habits. These are things like your nutrition. So actually planning into your week when you're going to eat healthy, if you're going to prep food or if you're going to buy meal prep, however you need to make it easiest for yourself. Things like meditation, journaling, breath work, reading, educating yourself, walking in nature. Things that really fill your cup back up when it comes to recovery so we can get that balance right. It's pointless taking on more stress if you don't have the parallel recovery to go with it, because eventually you'll just break and you'll have to stop anyway. And when you stop, all of that effort you've put in, it will just be diminishing returns because you'll have to start again at some point in the future. The other thing is fun. The amount of business owners I speak to, the amount of high-performing professionals that literally just have this kind of work mentality and there's nothing fun in their week, and then they then start to wonder why they're verging on burnout because they're only planning work into their week. Again, that alien would fly down and just think you're a boring knobhead who just does not care about anything other than work and just wants to run themselves into the ground. Fun is going to be the thing that gives you that space away, gives you that time away, and it actually helps you be a bit more creative so you're not just in a repetitive loop stuck on repeat. You then want to look at body resilience. So this is increasing your ability to deal with stress. Those are things like training, so physical health habits, and then also learning, so upskilling, coming to these education sessions, talking to me, asking questions, really diving into how you can increase your capacity by thinking and feeling in a different way about health and wellness and about the stress that you're under as well. The next thing you want to go to before you even think about putting work into your calendar. So, and when I'm saying this, like, we want to get specific, reoccurring things each week that you're going to focus on. I'm going to show you my calendar at the end for a good example. But we then want to focus on relationships. When are we planning time for friends and family? And it makes me laugh when I hear people say, oh, I don't want to do that for my friends and family. You think that work activities are important enough to put in a calendar, surely the most important thing, which is your relationships, should go in your calendar as well if you think work isn't important enough to go in. Otherwise, it kind of makes no sense. This is an interesting fact that I need to share on this point of relationships, that chronic loneliness can have a similar effect on life expectancy as smoking 15 cigarettes each day. Now, once you've got those habits in, so each week, it doesn't have to be that you're seeing people every single evening. It could be once a month you make sure you've just got a reoccurring event in your calendar, Google Calendar, iPhone Calendar, whatever it is you use, that says you're going to meet up with friends, just so that once a month you're at least prompted to go and set that up, to go and do that. Now, with work, you just need to be really, really specific. It's not about blocking huge amounts of time. I'll show you how I do my calendar at the end. It's about just being specific with what's going to move the needle the most, and thinking about how much time that's actually going to take, rather than allowing things just to bleed into your evening and slowly creep over the boundaries that you set. And you want to share that with your co-workers, you want to share that with friends and family, so that they're really clear as well on the times that you're setting to focus on specific tasks, because it's the lack of focus, it's the distraction that causes these events and these specific times that you've allocated to just be elongated. And then that causes more friction and causes more disruption than good if you was to just share it with them in the first place. Now, when it comes to setting this all up, I just want to speak specifically about the science of building good habits. The first one is setting boundaries, so being really, really clear. Some people will call you boring. That's perfectly fine. They're entitled to do that. But realistically, if you want to function at a high level, if you want the most out of life, you have to set these things in place. Otherwise, everything is just going to continue going on as it is right now, and you already know that's not where you want to be. With habit formation, we want to set a time, so make it clear in your calendar what time it's going to be, the place it's going to be, and then you want to be held accountable in some sort of way. Obviously, on the program, you're going to be held accountable by me, you're going to be held accountable by the community. You're also can leverage social media, you can leverage your friends, your family, however it needs to be. You can even push yourself to give yourself some forfeits if you don't complete tasks, or if you don't complete the things that you said you're going to do. These are all scientifically backed ways to leverage accountability to push you into building these habits. The next thing you want to try is habit stacking. So really, really simple. You attach a new habit, so something that you want to do, to something that you already do. Really simple one is that if you're losing weight and you're in the accelerated weight loss phase, every time you finish brushing your teeth, you make sure you calorie count for the day. Really simple, something you already do, makes it easier to remember. The other thing is by making the new habit as fun as possible. So for example, you're in the habit building phase of accelerated weight loss. You know you need to introduce 10,000 steps a day. That can be quite tedious. So you start setting up audiobooks, you start setting up calls, and you start setting things up that you can do whilst you're getting your steps in, whether it's outside, now the weather's nice, or in the gym, to make that habit of 10,000 steps per day far more fun. The other thing is walking meetings. I'll put this in there as well, because the amount of business owners and people I speak to that tell me that they just take most of their meetings sat down all day. The scientific rationale that shows that walking meetings actually increases the productivity of that meeting, because you're in a better state. Rather than just sitting, feeling half asleep in your chair all day, you're going to be in a better state to actually deliver and receive information. The other thing is removing resistance from all of the habits. And this can be really tactical, and I'd love for people to start asking me questions about how they can make the habits that we're setting easier, because it will be specific to your life, but here are a couple of really easy examples to implement. So if you are struggling with time with nutrition, you look at can you meal prep on a Sunday? Can you pay for meal prep if you don't have that time on a Sunday? How can we make it as easy as possible to eat healthy, but it be convenient, and find that happy middle ground? If we're looking to increase the amount of times you're going to the gym, can we buy some equipment for your home instead of you having to drive to the gym all the time to still get a similar session done? It's how much can we remove the resistance to make the habit as easy as possible, because when you set the habit up in that way, there's such a higher likelihood that you're going to continue with it. And coming on to that point of continuing with it, science shows us that it's around 66 days for a new habit to take place. So I've put this in there for you to really accept the fact that the first 66 days are probably going to be really, really difficult, and they're going to feel like there's a ton of resistance, and you actually just need to accept that resistance to move past it. Because once you do a habit for 66 days, it becomes far more automatic and far more easier for you to continue doing. Now, once you've set these all up, it's then about having a process in place to reflect and iterate. That might be daily, depending on what your schedule's like. That might be weekly. Personally, I do it weekly. And then if things change, meetings come in, I'll then change things daily as needed. But I have like a general weekly plan, and then I'll change that as much as needed. And then when you're changing that, you're reflecting on data, not your emotions. You're reflecting on the things that you're collecting, not how you feel about it, and not subjective beliefs and opinions. Because if you're not taking action, if you're not following through on the habits that you set for yourself, realistically, it's because we haven't got this foundation right. With all of those tactics, they're all backed by science. With all of that in place, you should start to find it so much easier to take action on all of this. If you're not, we fundamentally need to go back to the foundations and change this. Now, I wanted to share with you my calendar, just so you've got an idea of how what I focus on. This changes. I've had to block out some stuff because some of it is client calls, people I'm speaking to, and just specific people's informations. But this changes for me week by week. I set this as my foundation. You can see I start my day by writing content. That's both for emails, for the education platform, for social media. It's basically me getting my message out. It's then I've spent a considerable amount of time actually coaching, setting the plans up, all of the rest of it. I've had to block a lot of it out, as I said, because I mentioned names. I make sure I'm meditating to start my day. That's a particular habit that I found really, really helpful, that to actually improve my heart rate variability, because I've measured it over time. I've got all these different things set up. My training is always in there. Training for a marathon at the minute, so you can see from my running and the kind of sessions I'm doing, it's pretty intense and pretty heavy. Tea with Soph is always there. I always try to catch up with friends weekly. It's a nice rough guide for how I want to spend my week. And that's all your guide, all it needs to be. You need to have a rough guide for how are you going to focus on you, how are you going to focus on your relationships, and then how are you going to focus on optimizing work. And in those three categories, there are so many different subcategories that we can break it down to and make sure it's optimal for you and really, really specific.